Have you ever wondered what unusual jobs once kept Britain ticking along? Long before modern technology swept them away, whole communities depended on trades that now sound almost unbelievable. Yet for decades, these roles were real careers, each with its own place in daily life. Let's step back and uncover old British jobs that sound fake, but were totally real. Long before electronic jingles, ice cream vans relied on a crank or a speaker that never sounded quite right. The tune wobbled, tinny and uneven, but children still knew it instantly. You could hear it 3 streets over, cutting through the quiet like a promise. Kids ran out barefoot clutching coins that were sometimes still warm from a parent's hand. Funny thing is, even when the music faltered or skipped, nobody cared. It meant ice cream was close enough. On crowded city buses, the conductor moved like part of the machinery. Leather satchels strapped tight, ticket punch clicking, coins rattling in endless exchange. They squeezed down aisles, steadying themselves with one hand while barking out stops above the growl of the engine. Regulars knew their faces as well as the drivers, and when tempers rose in the crush, it was the conductor who cooled things down, or sometimes sparked them. They were rhythm and order rolled into one. Sometimes a distant cry was the signal, the rag and bone man coming through. Horse hooves clopped, cartwheels squealed, and his shout carried strangely clear between the rows of houses. He gathered scraps others overlooked, bits of cloth, cracked pans, old bones fit for glue. People leaned from doors to hand out what they had, small trades and a rough business. The smell of horse sweat lingered after he passed, yet his rounds tied streets together week after week. Up in projection rooms, hidden from the crowd, film splicers sat with scissors and glue. Rolls of celluloid looped over their arms, fingers checking for the faintest tear. When reels snapped mid-show, it was their quiet work that stitched stories back into place. The glue stung the nose, the clatter of rewinding filled the hours, but nobody watching downstairs ever thought about it. Every smooth flicker on screen owed something to those hands, steady in the dim red light. Before switchboards shrank into a desk phone, there were rooms filled with voices and wires. The telephone exchange operator sat at the center of it all, plugging and pulling cords, routing strangers together in seconds. They worked fast, half listening, half ignoring, hands moving without pause. Conversations slipped past in fragments, a name, a town, the click of a connection. Odd thing is, they knew everyone's business without really knowing anything at all. It was all mechanical, yet strangely intimate. Then there were chimney sweeps, blackened from head to boot, crawling into spaces most would never dare. Long rods clattered as they pushed soot free, coughing through clouds that coated walls and lungs alike. Children used to scatter when the sweep came out, looking more like a ghost than a man. Neighbors swore a freshly swept chimney made the whole room smell sharper, the fire burning easier. Dirty work, dangerous too, yet someone had to keep the smoke flowing. Not long ago, bowling alleys needed more than flashing lights and polished lanes. Behind the pins crouched a pin setter, waiting for the crash. Balls flew past, sometimes too close, and the job was equal parts patience and luck. They'd scramble to clear splintered wood, reset frames by hand, and duck just in time for the next throw. Pay was thin, sweat constant, but the game only worked because someone stayed crouched in the shadows, making it seamless. And tucked away in corners most avoided, the public toilet attendant kept things tolerable. A mop, a bucket, a folded stack of paper. Humble tools, but they stood between order and chaos. They knew every regular by shoes alone, knew who tried to sneak past without paying, and who always dropped a coin. Some attendants even kept flowers on the sink, a touch of pride in a thankless post. People rarely noticed, unless the job wasn't done. Long before scanners and barcodes, shops trusted a human touch for honesty. A professional queue stander made their living simply by waiting, hired to hold a place in line for rationed goods, new tickets, or sales that drew crowds. They knew how to shuffle forward just enough without losing patience, and then hand over the spot at the last moment. It was dull, yes, but in cities where time was money, their service filled an odd gap no machine could. There was also the leech collector, a figure you might glimpse knee-deep in muddy streams, trousers rolled and ankles exposed. With each step, dark shapes latched on, battling quietly with blood. The collectors didn't flinch. They pulled the wriggling things free, dropped them in jars, and carried on until they had enough to sell to the apothecaries. doctors swore by leeches for all manner of ailments, so business was steady. Painful work, really, but steady coin makes people tolerate much. Then came the lamplighter, pacing cobbled streets at dusk, pole in hand. With a practiced motion, they touched the flame to each glass lantern, one after another, turning darkness into a soft glow. Whole neighborhoods stirred to life with those little bursts of light, families knowing night had truly settled. Come dawn, the same figure returned to snuff them out, invisible once more until evening. It was a rhythm as old as the streets themselves, though gas and bulbs soon ended it. In fairs and carnivals, there lurked the human alarm clock of its own kind, the fairground barker. Loud voices cut through the din, promising thrills, wonders, and fortunes just a few steps away. They pulled in crowds with exaggeration and a grin, waving arms wide, eyes always searching for hesitation. A good barker could turn a trickle of passers-by into a flood, the showman's art built on nothing but sound and timing. It was theatre, all before the curtain even rose. Out at sea, another strange trade once kept ships stocked, the oyster dredger. With heavy nets dragged along the seabed, they hauled up shellfish prized for food, but also for the pearls that might appear as rare treasures. It was grueling, bent-back work on rocking decks, arms raw from rope and salt spray, yet many clung to it for steady income. Towns on the coast came alive on dredging days, baskets filled and markets humming with the briny catch. In quiet country lanes, a mole catcher might once have been a familiar sight. They were not men of haste, but of observation, crouching low to read the faint swell of earth where a tunnel pressed close to the surface. Farmers fretted over ruined fields, so the mole catcher's traps, sometimes nothing more than spring-loaded wood and iron, were set with careful patience. Payment was modest, a few shillings here and there, or occasionally the pelts themselves, which wives stitched into linings for winter gloves. It was lonely work, half guesswork and half instinct, carried out with a quiet respect for the land. In the crowded sprawl of towns, the rat catcher took on a different kind of burden. Armed with sacks and accompanied by wiry terriers, they roamed alleys and tavern yards, hauling squirming prizes that made bystanders uneasy. Some accused them of breeding rats just to guarantee more trade, and indeed, the line between control and profit was thin. Yet when plague whispers returned or granaries filled with vermin, people sought them out, holding their noses but handing over the coins. To children they were both terrifying and fascinating, figures who slipped into corners where no one else dared linger. More unsettling still was the resurrectionist, a figure whispered about with unease. By night they lifted fresh earth in graveyards, prizing open coffins for surgeons who needed cadavers and could find no legal supply. Families hired guards, dogs, even iron cages called mort safes to protect graves, but still bodies disappeared. Those caught risked mob violence, and nothing stirred anger like the thought of a loved one stolen from rest. Yet medical schools quietly thrived on their work, every dissected limb and open chest laying the groundwork for knowledge that doctors would carry into hospitals for decades. High above the ground, the steeplejack lived at the mercy of rope, wind, and nerve. They climbed smokestacks, factory chimneys, and spires without the safety equipment we would now expect, hauling bricks and mortar up with them. Industrial towns needed their skills, though many preferred not to look up and watch. For the steeplejack, each job balanced danger with pride, the skyline itself becoming their workshop. Some never returned from a climb, but those who did were spoken of with a mixture of admiration and disbelief. Men who walked where birds rested. Though these professions have slipped into history, each carried with it a thread of ordinary life now lost. They shaped communities in ways both practical and peculiar, and their passing reminds us how swiftly familiar roles can vanish, leaving only stories, faint and fading, behind.